grain flowing from the field, vital to all men, a necessity in peace, even more important in war. Food for those who fight, for those who forge the weapons, for those who might otherwise starve in war-ravaged lands across the sea. Crops were bountiful in 1944, but farmers were troubled. How was this great crop to be harvested? Thousands of farmers had gone to fight for their country. Others had joined war production lines. Weapons of war consume materials normally used in farm machinery production. And yet, the crop had to be harvested. Some of the crop would have been lost, even with adequate manpower, if we had been forced to rely on the old-fashioned methods, which consumed countless hours in performing slow, cumbersome operations. The binding and shocking, the loading of the wagon, yes, in the age of the steam threshing rig, many machines and great crews of men were needed for the harvest. In the years of peace, the combine had reduced the need for manpower and speeded up the harvest. But still, farmers and engineers had worked toward the day when the combine would operate without the tractor and with only one man. Success came with the first Massey Harris self-propelled combine in 1937. No cost had been spared in engineering, design, or construction, resulting in the practical and successful application of the self-propelled principle. Another great step had been achieved in the mechanization of harvesting. Then began the improvement of this large machine. Engineers and farmers again worked together to develop a smaller but still more practical and efficient combine that would be lower in cost. And in 1940, the Massey Harris self-propelled combine of today was placed in operation. A tested machine, completely proved in its efficiency, sturdiness, capacity, and economy of operation. In Canada, the self-propelled combine had already worked wonders. With the coming of the war, men and machines were scarce, and the Canadian government, impressed with the higher efficiency of the self-propelled, released materials to make available 60% more of these machines than the quota for the year provided. Canadian farmers made speedy work of their crops, cutting 50 to 60 acres per day. Batteries of self-propelled combines made possible the harvesting of the second greatest crop in Canadian history, in spite of the limited manpower and materials available. Almost 450 million bushels of wheat were harvested, in addition to millions of bushels of other grains. In Great Britain, self-propelled combines operated in practically every grain-growing county of the United Kingdom, from Dorset in the south of England to Elgin in the north of Scotland, from the far corner of Ainsley in Wales to Norfolk on the east coast. British wheat averaged 40 bushels to the acre. 6 million additional acres of park and grassland had been put under cultivation. This increased Britain's self-sufficiency from 30 to 70%, resulting in a saving of 12 million tons of shipping per year. Yes, in the British harvest too, It was the self-propelled combine that led the field. In the United States, the American farmer had his problems too. War food goals soared to new heights when the War Food Administration asked farmers to increase their small grain acreage by 26%, despite critical shortages of men and machines. To help the farmer meet this request, Massey Harris drew up a plan which called for the building of 500 self-propelled combines, in addition to those to be constructed under the yearly quota. The machines were to be sold to competent operators who would pledge to harvest at least 2,000 acres with each machine. These 500 men and their machines were to form the Massey Harris Harvest Brigade, whose combined goal it would be to harvest 1 million acres of much-needed grain. To obtain additional materials for building these machines, the government's approval of this plan was necessary. Approval was obtained upon the presentation of these comparisons based on 1 million acres. How many combines will be required to harvest 1 million acres? If the 6-foot power takeoff models were used, it would require 1,389 combines. If the 14-foot conventional models were used, 625 combines would be needed. Only 500 self-propelled combines would be required. How about tractors required to operate these combines? With the 6-foot power takeoff models, 1,389 tractors would be needed. With the 14-foot conventional models, 625 tractors would be necessary. No tractors required for the self-propelled combine. How many engines for both tractor and combine for harvesting 1 million acres? For the power takeoff models, 1,389 engines necessary. For the 14-foot conventional models, 625 engines would be needed for the combine, plus 625 more for the tractors. Only 500 engines needed for the self-propelled combine. How about fuel required to harvest 1 million acres? For the power takeoff models, 750,000 gallons of tractor fuel. The conventional models would consume 750,000 gallons for the tractors, plus 500,000 for the combine. A total of 1,250,000 gallons. Only 750,000 gallons of fuel for the self-propelled. How about manpower required to harvest 1 million acres? The power takeoff models would require 1,389 men working 555,600 hours. The conventional combines would require 625 men for the combines, plus 625 men for the tractors. A total of 1,250 men working 500,000 hours. Only 500 men would be needed to man the self-propelled combine, working just 200,000 hours. How about yield? In the harvesting of 1 million acres, the self-propelled combines would save 500,000 bushels of wheat, which would normally be lost with the conventional tractor and combine, as their wheels must of necessity run through the standing grain on the opening cut, beating it down, so that an average of 1/2 bushel per acre can never be recovered. This grain, normally lost on the opening cut, is saved by the self-propelled combine, which has no tractor ahead of it. A saving of 500,000 bushels of wheat for every 1 million acres cut. The government approved this plan, and with the allocation of extra materials, the Massey Harris assembly line started rolling out the Harvest Brigade combine. By early spring, the extra combines were on their way to Texas and Oklahoma to meet the early harvest, the starting point of the Harvest Brigade. In the meantime, farmers from every section of the grain country answered the call to join the Harvest Brigade. They signed the Brigade pledge, agreed to custom harvest at least 2,000 acres with each machine. The purchasers of Brigade combines went to Texas and Oklahoma to take delivery of their machines, some driving their machines directly to the field. Others loaded their machines on trucks and transported them to the field. Still others joined together, making sure everything was secure, then setting out for the fields in great caravans. Harvest Brigade was underway. On northward through Texas and Oklahoma they drove. Sometimes torrential rain soaked the fields, stopped the harvesting. The machines were idle. After the storms, grain that had been beat down was harvested. Ravines and mud holes were skirted. Sometimes the grain was thin and weedy. But on they drove, working toward their goal. The scoreboard on each machine showed steady gains day by day as the acreages cut were recorded. As the wheat ripened, they moved northward into Kansas and Nebraska. The government field agencies extended the finest cooperation to the men of the brigade throughout the harvest. They constantly supplied information and assistance that increased the efficiency and organization of the Harvest Brigade beyond measure. County agents also cooperated with men like Massey Harris dealer Larry Letness, who assisted the organization in working out schedules and cutting locations. Letness, piloting his own plane, kept in constant touch with the brigade. Letness then directed the Harvest Brigadiers to uncut fields of grain nearby. And like Larry Letness, Massey Harris dealers all over the country contributed immeasurably to the efficiency of the Harvest Brigade. The self-propelled combines moved on over thousands of acres of grain, their harvest record mounting steadily. In August, they reached the fields of the Dakotas and Montana. Here, in some sections, the swathing method of harvesting was used. Pickup attachments were quickly installed. The self-propelled combines were on their way, picking up the grain from the swaths with never a letdown in speed. Meanwhile, in California and the great Northwest, other divisions of the brigade were at work. In addition to wheat and other small grains, the self-propelled combines worked wonders in the huge, wet fields of rice. In other sections of the country, maize was harvested. Flax was another of the many crops brought in by the Harvest Brigade. As the end of the harvest neared, the scoreboard showed continued increases. Many machines passed the original 2,000-acre goal, reaching in some instances far in excess of the 3,000-acre mark. In the early fall, the Harvest Brigade reached its goal. Wheat and other small grains grown from Texas to the Canadian border, in California and the great Northwest, had been brought in. The Harvest Brigade went far beyond its goal of 1 million acres. The men of the land had worked together in this American harvest to form one of the swiftest, most efficient teams the world has ever known. The Massey Harris Harvest Brigade. 500 men, 500 machines, doing more work per man and per machine than ever before in the history of the world. In the unforgettable year of 1944, the year of the Wonder Harvest.